this thing called church, our first Zoomcast podcast of this new series called This Thing Called Church. I am joined, my name is Karen Payne. I am the Director of Communications at Davidson United Methodist Church. I am joined today with our two pastors, Kevin Turner and David Hockett. How are you guys today?
We're good. Kevin?
Doing great.
So David, this is your first time kind of doing one of these with Kevin and I. And you mentioned that you had watched a couple other of our old podcasts, Zoomcasts. And one thing you may know is that sometimes I share like funny or silly stories about animals that have happened personally, not like just random, but this time I need to turn the table and Kevin needs to share his story about, yes, you know what I'm going to ask you about. So did you know Kevin had a raccoon living in his house?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yes.
Do tell, Kevin.
Yes. So Kevin had a raccoon. Tell us.
Yeah, a raccoon. So this is maybe, I don't know, people need to know this, but on Saturday nights, I really can't sleep. So I go and sleep, and usually, a lot of times I'll go to the guest room and sleep because I'm up late, worried about Sunday. And so as I was asleep one Saturday night, I heard this little scritch, scritch, scritch. And that really made me not be able to sleep, so I had to go sleep on the couch. But the next day, we were outside, and I looked up, and there was a giant raccoon. And we figured out that on a Sunday afternoon, you can't get anybody to come look at your raccoon-infested house. So it was a mama who had babies in our attic. And it took about 2 weeks because we tried to be nice and not kill these things. But we had about 3 interventions, and finally she just got so irritated with us, she moved out. So we had to do a lot of work on our house because she had gone a couple different ways. But
so you're not a very good landlord then?
I'm really not. We evicted her. And our daughter, who is, super compassionate to animals, was so worried we were going to kill these little babies.
Well, you should. I mean, I was telling you all these videos, you Google raccoons and everything. Like, so many people have made them into pets. Like, you should have just, had some pets.
That's what my daughter wanted, but we did not do that.
I think my daughter named your dog all of the.
Yeah, they did.
They named them all.
The mama was named Tyrone, but it was very funny because the first guy that came to look at it, he was, these people get like jaded, and he was like, whatever, there's no raccoon there, whatever. And so he went up on there and he pushed the board up where she was on the other side of it, and he dropped it and said, oh yeah, she's still there. But yeah, we had to spray, I don't know the right word for this, so this is indelicate, but I think it's wolf urine in the attic to make her move out. So so I'm not going in the attic for a while.
You should have just kept her. You could have bought her little clothes and all kinds of things.
Yeah, she seemed very nice. She was well fed. I'll show you a picture sometime, David.
The picture is crazy. Like she's definitely so funny. So anyway, so I'm not the only one that has crazy animal stories. The one story that I shared that was a little crazy was my parents had a mountain house in Boone, and they were in their house and they look out and a bear had climbed up their 25-foot deck. It was just hanging out on the ledge. So
waiting for dinner.
Yep. They really do climb well. Don't climb a tree. You can't out-climb it.
No. Did you ever have any bear in your yard when you lived in Boone, David?
No, I swear. I wanted to see a bear the entire time we lived there. Everybody around me saw bear. I never saw a single one. I swear they were lying and making them up.
No.
But they were there. No, they're black bear all over Watauga County, that part of the world.
Yeah.
They're not too. I mean, they're not too scary. They're generally more afraid of you than you are of them. We don't have grizzlies. We don't have the kind of bears that will eat you. Like they do out west.
I'm not going to be able to find out which bear they are. They're just, if I see it, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
The best part though with some of the videos that my mom sent me of the bear, because it came back several times, is when she heard it coming back up the deck again, she leaned over and she's like, no, no, no. And the thing went down. And we're like, oh my God.
He respects his elders. He's a nice bear.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's our animal story. To start off this new Zoomcast podcast, it starts off with an animal story. That's fantastic.
It's going to be hard to follow that.
Bear theology.
So, David, one of the things we were talking about before we started was your coffee cup. And you were talking about how you thought it would be fun to drink out of a different coffee cup every time we did one of these episodes. Do you want to show us the coffee cup you have today?
Yeah, well, this is the one I drink out of most days. Like I wash and use the same coffee mug literally every day. I don't know why it has this on this side, but someone printed these and gave them to members of the cabinet. But on this side, it has this little phrase, working to regain my sweet spirit. Yeah, we'll just leave that right there. As if I ever had a sweet spirit. So,
I don't know about that, but you want people to donate coffee mugs for you to use.
yeah,
right?
why not? You know, I'll take a free coffee mug. But, you know, it'll have to be church podcast appropriate, but you know.
So, and you really want the UNC Chapel Hill mugs, right? That's the one.
Yeah, I might draw the line at I don't know. I've got some of those around the house, and I have had to drink out of them in a pinch, but I didn't feel well the rest of the day, so I'm not sure about that.
I do need to ask, has your wife approved this idea? Is she okay with 50, 60 coffee mugs coming in?
Oh, she doesn't know. She's on a need to know basis.
And my wife actually, I don't think watches these. So if your wife doesn't watch, she won't know.
Oh, she probably won't watch. She hears enough of me talking without joining in. Like, you kidding? I'm going to watch you on a screen? No.
Unfortunately, my husband and my son like to watch. Only so they can critique me later.
Your son gives me like reviews. He'll say like, that was a good joke, or that wasn't great. I'll have to be critiqued by a 13-year-old that's not in your house.
Yeah. My kids probably, my oldest might watch. Salem might watch us, but Abby probably not. Eli would just watch and say that I'm a dork. So there you go. Which
send
might
your
be
coffee
true.
mugs. Bring them to church. Leave them in his mailbox. Send them. I think that would be fun for a different coffee mug each time.
Absolutely.
Nice, see what we get. So that would be awesome. So I just wanted to also touch on the title of this Zoomcast podcast is called This Thing Called Church. And we had been thinking for a few weeks, like, what's a catchy name? What can we, do? And back on April 25th, David was preaching his sermon. And in the middle of his sermon, he used the line, this thing called church. And that was like the light bulb moment for me. And I thought, that's really a neat saying title, because I feel like that's something that we will be talking about, this thing called church, whether it's inside the building, outside the building, building faith or making disciples out of people. So I really, we know it's a little bit longer than most podcasts, but I do think that it's a good title for what we'll be talking about in our upcoming episodes. So starting off, we thought it would be fun to keep it simple and get to know David. And so lucky you, drink your coffee, get your sip in. So this will be really informal, no pressure, David. We just wanted to get, people have been coming to church and watching your sermons for the last month or so, but everybody still likes learning the personal side and just knowing more about you. So I'll just start. You don't need to tell us your whole life story, but I know you basically grew up in this area, and you have been, you've been pastors, senior pastor and associate pastors at many churches in the area. And now you're two-timing right now. You are district superintendent, And then you're also a pastor for us. And that's, I mean, I feel bad. You've been working 2 full-time jobs for a couple of months, and I know that's not easy. But if you just want to, I guess, start off somewhere in the beginning of to me, the number one question that I want answered, you don't have to start off with it, but I love hearing pastors tell their calling, like their story. Because I always just am fascinated by, did you hear, like, was it a gradual thing, or did something significant happen? So those are the things that I'd like to know, but you can start with where you'd like to start.
Yeah, so, well, and you guys, please interrupt at any time. I don't want to just, go on and on, but so my wife Kim and I are native North Carolinians. We both grew up in Randolph County, which is south of Greensboro. Asheboro is the county seats where the North Carolina Zoo is, if you know much about that area. We grew up about 25 minutes north of the zoo. So if you've ever been there, you've been close to home. My family, I said this in a sermon, most of my relatives, other than my great grandfather who married a Methodist school teacher, they were all Quakers. And so I have that kind of in my DNA. And, but my great grandfather and grandfather and parents went to the local Methodist church, and where I was raised and grew up. And we were that family that quite often I usually kind of joke and say we weren't there if the doors were open. We were there because my dad was opening the doors. I mean, that we were just there a lot. He actually taught me how to break into our church with a pocket knife. So he would go over he didn't break into the church, but on Saturday nights he'd go over to turn the heat on in the building, and sometimes I'd go with him, and sometimes he'd forget his keys. And we'd have to, jimmy the front door with a pocket knife. And so I've been around the church. I was baptized as an infant. I was on Palm Sunday in 1970. I, was confirmed at 12 or 13 in my home church. And so church was always a part of our life. And I was active, but pretty typical teenager too. It really started when our youth director, I remember we were driving somewhere to pick up supplies for an event or something, and I was helping him, and he just said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing something professionally in the life of the church?" I was probably 16 or 17. And that was all he said. He never brought it up again. He didn't push it. He didn't have an agenda. He just asked the question and sort of let it linger. And that got me thinking, maybe it wasn't what I ever really wanted to do, but it planted a seed. And went off to NC State to study agricultural economics. That was my degree program to start with. And Kim was at Carolina. She was a year behind me at UNC Chapel Hill. We started dating. We'd gone to high school together, dated a little in high school, but really started dating her freshman year, my sophomore year. Like fools, we got married about a year later. She was 19 and I was 21. Kids out there, don't do this at home. But for us, it worked. We grew together, thankfully, as we matured and grew up. We grew together, and I kind of did some exploratory conversations about ministry with my local church pastor. Really thought I was just going to get a job and go to work after college, and but then by my junior year, I thought, well, maybe graduate school. That sounds like a good next step. So I'd applied and got into some PhD programs in sociology, which I had changed my major to, and then thought, well, maybe I'll study at Duke. I could do a little theology, a little sociology, and so I applied to seminary. Told Kim she had a year left, and at Chapel Hill, and I said, if I get in and get some help, I'll not big on signs, but I'll say maybe God wants me to do this. So I got a scholarship that paid for it. We could make the finances work as a young married couple. And I went off to Duke to get a PhD to teach. And in my second year there, I still had these nudgings. I thought that would be my ministry. That's how I would serve the church as an academic. And my second year, I was offered the opportunity to serve 2 small churches part-time, really to kind of help paying for school. And all the academics in my life told me, hey, if you're going to teach in the seminary, it wouldn't hurt if you've done a little church work, so you'll know what to say to these folks who are going to be pastors. And went off to serve these 2 little churches, and have never stopped serving local churches. I really, a great friend and mentor, Dr. George Thompson, he helped me kind of put some language to it. He said, David, you're in kind of medical, in the medical world, you're a general practice guy. You're not a specialist. And more and more, I really realized that. I thank God for people who focus their whole lives on a relatively narrow subject and go very deep and have wonderful things to teach us. But I really like a little bit of it all, worship, the sacraments, ordering the life of the church, preaching, teaching, fellowship with other Christians, friendships in the church. I kind of like a little bit of it all on a daily basis. And you can be a pastor and engage your mind. The church needs us to love God with our minds. So I still get to do a bit of that as well in teaching and preaching. So that I don't, I'm like Tertullian said, wouldn't it be a great thing if folks never knew a time when they weren't a part of the life of the church? And that's not true for everyone. And God reaches us all in different ways, thank goodness. But for me, it really is. I don't remember a time when I wasn't a part of the life of the church. Have served churches all over Western North Carolina, and most recently as a district superintendent, and now at Davidson. And I was walking around Sunday morning thinking, just kind of breathing in the environment of being in a local community of faith where folks were happy to be together on a Sunday morning, and thought, this is good. This is kind of what I was made for.
So I think for some people, I think a lot of people do know how we are structured and stuff, but I think for some, they're still like, wait, what's a district superintendent? Like, what does that mean? And what do you do? And is that like what all pastors strive to be? Is that like the ultimate goal is to be like a district superintendent? Like, is that the chain of command, or I know you're not randomly selected, but you are called to be that. But can you talk a little bit about what the district superintendent does, and what your thought, like how long you've been doing that, and what's happening?
Yes, it's sure, Karen. So without boring everybody to death, we have an Episcopal form of governance, and then a system of conferences or larger gatherings. And so bishops have an Episcopal area, and our bishop has Western North Carolina, which is kind of Greensboro to Tennessee and Virginia to South Carolina, and the borders. And within that conference, a bishop will have assistants to help him or her carry out their responsibilities, because there are like 1,100 churches and 1,500 pastors in our conference. So one person cannot manage that. And so there are districts, which is just smaller geographical areas within a conference. And then, and different conferences divided up differently. We have 8 of them. And so the bishop has 8 assistants around the conference to help him carry out his responsibilities of overseeing the churches and the pastors. And so I have the Metro District, which is the greater Charlotte and the greater Charlotte metro area, about 5 counties, about 130 churches, 170 or so clergy. And I help the bishop oversee those churches and pastors. And I would say, I don't know that pastors, I never aspired. I was on a treadmill in South Carolina at a leadership event, and my phone rang, and it was a Charlotte number, and I didn't recognize it, but I thought, it might be important. I knew a lot of folks in the Charlotte area, and it was Bishop Leland, 7:30 in the morning, minding my own business, saying, hey, on your way back from your leadership thing, could you stop by Huntersville and let's have a conversation? And and he asked me if I would consider. Bishops invite people onto their cabinet. They appoint people to the cabinet, and which is the district superintendents and the bishop. That's how I ended up there. I've loved doing it for 3 years. It is a heavily administrative role. And I've missed local church work. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. I've learned a whole lot. It's a different perspective on the church. You see the church from a different perspective. But I'm really glad to be back in a local church. Yeah.
So now you get to preach again. So
Yeah.
how has it been, because you didn't have to, well, I think you had told me that you were still preaching occasionally. So it's not like you didn't do it for 3 years.
Yeah, homecomings, groundbreakings, fill in for people when they're out of town, special events, those kinds of, you get those invitations when you're a DS. It's been great to be back preaching again on a regular. It's actually easier to preach weekly than to do it occasionally because you can get in a rhythm. And I've always imagined preaching as kind of an ongoing conversation. So whatever you didn't say well the last week, you can fix it the next week. You can build on what you want to say a week down the line. You don't have to say it all in one Sunday. You get to do it again the next week. But I will say it is hard. Preaching for the first several months in a new setting is difficult because you don't really know. You know a little bit about the church, but you don't really know people. And I think for me, preaching is usually pretty personal. Is I have people's faces and names and lives in mind when I'm writing a sermon. Not that I would call anyone out or in the middle of a sermon, but who just lost their mom or whose marriage is struggling or whose kids are giving them a fit or who just got promoted and is excited about it, who's just had a baby. Those kinds of things inform your preaching. And what's going on in the community should inform your preaching too, the larger community. And so I know a little about Davidson, Huntersville, Cornelius, but not a lot yet. So I'll be a better preacher at Davidson a year from now when I know more, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think you are in a somewhat better advantage than even Diane and Brad because when they started, we were kind of still in lockdown, sort of lockdown. And so at least like you actually get to preach to people in the building.
It's a huge advantage. And so that's so crazy. We Sunday, someone came up to me and introduced themselves to me. And I said, oh, so they were back for the first time, said, so nice to meet you. And then it was Diane or Jim maybe came over and said, I don't think I've met you either. So, and it's not that they haven't been engaged. This person is an active member of the church, but since last July, they hadn't been in the building. And so I forget that particularly Brad and Diane they're about as new at this in some ways as I am. So.
And they've been here for almost a year and we yet to have really an in-person staff meeting. Like we Zoom, so you see everybody in the little boxes, but, trying to learn people from a box on your screen versus just seeing people in the office and in the hallways. It's really hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, well, we're so glad to have you and we're so glad to get to know more about you and hear more little stories here and there. So one thing that we did last summer when we had Brad and Diane, we even did it to Jim and Kevin, was I asked, we called it the famous 8 questions. And this
You didn't warn me about this, Kevin. Thanks a lot.
I actually had forgotten about it. I think I'd blocked that memory. Good luck. Yeah.
Well, I like to keep us authentic. I give you some information, but I don't want it to be rehearsed. And I don't want, So do you remember James Lipton from the Actors Studio?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so every time he would have a guest at the end, he would, it was called the famous, I think he did famous 10 questions. We narrowed it down to 8. And so all of our current pastors have answered these questions. It's the first, don't laugh.
No, I'm laughing because David is quietly shaking his head like, I want to go back to being a DS suddenly all over again.
Yeah. Nobody cared about me then. Who's that guy? What's a DS?
Go ahead.
So
I'm eager. They're good questions. Don't worry.
they are, and you don't need. There's no right or wrong, and it's basically really just the first thing that pops into your head. So don't.
That could be dangerous, Karen.
Okay, I think you can handle this. So
the older I get, the worse my filter is. So you realize that's how that works.
You'll be good. Okay, here we go. The first one. What is your favorite scripture reading?
I think it's probably the Philippians Christ hymn.
Philippians 2?
Yeah, Philippians 2.
Let this mind be in you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christ emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being found in human form. That passage.
Okay.
Yeah. Go look it up, guys. Philippians 2. It's really good. They speculate it may have been that it's likely a part of an early church liturgy.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably the oldest hymn in the.
Yeah. Maybe one of the oldest hymns in the faith. So
yeah.
Okay.
That's why I refer to it as the Christ hymn. But it is Philippians 2. Anyway.
All right. Well, then it ties into the second question, which is, what is your favorite hymn?
Oh man, that's hard. That's not a fair question.
I said the same. I said the same thing. I said it depends on what time of year.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, goodness.
Well, what's one that's speaking to you recently?
Well, I love "Be Thou My Vision." I'll just go with that one. Both the hymn and the hymn tune.
Oh, good job. You know, there's a difference.
Yeah.
Good.
Some
Sorry.
days. Yeah. I think.
Well, put that in for Sunday, Kevin.
Played it last Sunday as the prelude, actually.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, wow. See, you're such a brown noser.
I know I am. Can you say that on this? I don't.
It's a beautiful hymn.
It is.
It really is.
Okay. What is your favorite religious holiday?
Oh, it's probably Christmas.
I think everybody said that one.
Yeah, it's just and it's the symbols, the music, the kind of I'm more of a fall and winter kind of person anyway. So anyway, that's it. It's probably if not Christmas, then I know you're supposed to say Easter, right? That's what, but and I do love Easter, but if not Christmas, then probably All Saints.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I was hoping you'd say Good Friday. I love Good Friday.
Oh, I do love Good Friday too. Tenebrae.
It's my evangelical coming out. I love to feel miserable. So.
Yeah, Christmas, but All Saints is right up there.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
See, this depends on if Kim is going to watch or not. I was going to say the sound of my wife's voice.
Aww.
Beautiful.
But she would say, "You were so full of it." So, but yeah, I think that, two things. Honestly, the sound of the people, the voices of the people that I love, that I'm closest to, Kim and the kids, that their laughter and voices are second to none. But then also a really excellent choir, particularly a cappella, that's where you just sort of fade into the music and get lost, like you've been sort of carried to some other world.
Now who's
kind of like Thomas Tallis' piece that was sung on Sunday by our choir.
Oh, such a good piece.
Yep.
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
I'm writing this down.
Kevin, I watched yours because I had to go back and get the questions, and I remembered what yours was, and I'm gonna.
I don't even. I really don't. I'm sorry. What did I say?
Fine. I'm gonna do it just so I can bother you. But
so
what's yours, David?
Yeah. Someone whining is like really just grating on. That gets on my nerves. Just the kind of whining voice, complaining, but I think also like a lot of when at a dinner when the person scrapes their knife or fork over the plate, that one's
I have a no
not
whining
pleasant.
sign.
Yeah, not pleasant.
I have a
You got
no
a
whining
sign.
I
Yeah.
don't know where it is. The youth gave it to me. What was
All right.
mine, Karen?
Yours was the sound of tape being, I think the tape being pulled or something.
Yeah, I do hate that.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Right now, I don't like my son says the word literally about every third word.
But
When
that's
he
not a
doesn't,
sound.
It's just literally. Anyway, tape. Yeah, that does bother me.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say it literally.
He doesn't say
Like,
literally, but it's
on
everything.
the.
He'll be like,
Yeah.
"It's literally breakfast." I'm like, you can't say it all the time. Anyway.
Yeah, it's either breakfast or it's not. Right.
Sorry. What's the next question? I'm excited.
You already played this game, Kevin.
I know, but it's fun to watch David squirm a bit. So.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Actually, no, I could answer that. I'll find a better way of answering that. I like to cook and welcome and host people. I'd run a bed and breakfast or a really nice pub.
Oh.
That was
I just like to
get.
I mean, I get that from my grandmother, I think, and my mother, who just like to have people over and feed them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert and a functional extrovert.
Okay. Sorry, Karen.
I'm kind of right on the line. I'm just a little bit to the right or left of E, whichever direction it goes. But yeah.
Okay, what profession would you like not to do?
Oh, that's goodness. What would I like? Oh, anything that requires the use of any higher level math. Like, I'm fascinated by that. I read an article the other day about the multiverse, the theory of the multiverse. You know, universes, there's multiple universes. I understood about like 50% of it. And I find that all fascinating, but the thoughts of doing it just bring back really bad memories from high school and college. Kim's the math person. She's an IT analyst. If you want to talk about, I mean, thank God our kids got her DNA in that regard.
Okay, so the last question is, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, I hope God says, well done and welcome. My fear is God might say, what were you thinking? So yeah, I've often, this is kind of a sort of a halfway joke, but not. I have sometimes wondered if God called me in the ministry to like keep me in line. It has nothing to do with anyone else. It's so that I won't be just completely a miserable human being. A lot of my sermons are just sort of, me talking to, just kind of my own internal dialogue out loud. You guys get to listen in. So that's, but I hope God says, not bad. Well done. You did okay with what I gave you.
Good.
I got one. Can I ask him a question?
One?
Yeah. Who's your favorite theologian? The theologian that's influenced you most?
Oh, that's hard. I think, well, I am a Methodist pastor, so Wesley has influenced me a lot, both John and Charles.
Oh yeah.
Because Charles helps us sing the faith, sing our theology, which is kind of fun, and probably more memorable for most people than people remember what they sing, or they tend to. But I think so. From my seminary days, Stanley Hauerwas, Christian ethicist, probably really shaped the way I think about church, faith, the church's engagement with the world. Yeah, and still shapes me. And some important ways, I think.
Is there a book you're reading right now?
Yeah, I'm reading a book by Brene Brown called Dare to Lead. Brene Brown is she's a really kind of a sociologist, leadership person by training. She PhD. She teaches in Texas. So she's not necessarily she doesn't come at everything from a faith perspective, but very wise. Written a lot on shame and guilt, and how those impact our interactions with others. But this book's about Dare to Lead. So
Appropriate for your.
Yeah. And I picked up another one. I haven't started yet, but How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going by Susan Beaumont.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, some folks will know. Yeah, someone knows Susan Beaumont.
Yeah.
But
I
love poetry, so I'm always reading something.
I have another question for you,
Sure.
David. I have a theory that your undergraduate degree informs how you preach. So you can guess where I'm going on this. How do you think your sociology shows up in your preaching? Your training.
Yeah. So it definitely does, and I think I did a lot with. I think it impacts it in the way by in part by the way I kind of see the world, which tends to be through systems and communities and society, rather than merely individual lives. Which God loves individuals. God made individuals. But you'll hear a lot of that. You'll hear a lot about community, society, corporate, not in the business sense, but corporate in this together sense. The kind of the economy of God's kingdom, how life is shaped together. I'll talk about politics in the kind of classical sense of politics being about how communal life is ordered, not Democrat, Republican, but politics. And Jesus is political in the sense that he talks about how communal life should be ordered, and that the church is kind of a window into what God intends for all of our kind of communities to look like. So that comes out definitely. And I think I picked that up early on. I think you're right about that, Kevin. Some sociology degrees are more kind of statistical, demographics, that kind of work. My focus was more on the bigger picture theory kinds of stuff, dramaturgy, phenomenology, those kinds of things impact my.
What was that first word?
Dramaturgy. We can talk about. We will not do an episode on that, but folks can go look that up.
I've never heard that word ever, so I always enjoy learning on these things. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. I think you can learn learn something every day from everyone. I'm curious by nature, so
yeah.
Cool.
Well, wonderful. So you survived the first episode. That's awesome. Can't wait to do more. And I think we also talked about doing these bi-weekly instead of every week at this point, just with schedules and timing. Just two quick announcements for people that are watching or listening. We have resumed our 11 o'clock service. So we now have two services, the 9 a.m. that you can attend in person and the 11. We are still live streaming the 9. You still need to register if you are going to either the 9 or the 11. So you can do that via the website or the email that goes out. And then the other announcement that I had is just that it's Missional Impact Days is this month, happening in May. And we have lots of opportunities for you to sign up on our website under the Missional Impact Days. There's all ways you can help in the community with our partners. So please, if you have time in the next 2 weeks, look at those opportunities and sign up. Anything else you guys need to add?
Well, Pentecost is coming up. Really excited about that. I would mention that, May 23rd, and confirmation.
Yeah.
And just to say, it's been really great to see so many people coming back to worship. You're right, David. It is great to be back, and it feels a little bit like Easter every Sunday. People are in such good moods. And I'm hearing people singing very quietly, so I enjoy that as well. So
Yeah. And just, we're so grateful for the opportunity to be at Davidson. It's wonderful church, and we've been warmly welcomed. And I just look forward to, again, Kevin, getting to meet more and more folks, to work with our amazing staff, folks like Kevin and Karen. And we're just honored to be a part of your pastoral team and a part of the Davidson family. So thanks for having us. And Karen, thanks for today. This was fun.
Oh yeah. You might not be saying that in a few weeks, but yeah, it is fun to kind of be back in this format again and have these conversations. And basically the purpose is just to keep people connected with us in the congregation and share what we know, what's going on, that we can, but also hopefully help people grow in their faith and their discipleship. So we will be back in 2 weeks. And please, if you have any questions you would like to ask David, or anything you would like for us to discuss, you can email me at kpayne@davidsonumc.org. Bring us your coffee cups, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Have a great day.